Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, obviously Anthony Joshua will now be facing Oleksandr Usyk and he has been given 10 days to make sure he gets that deal done. So I'm sure that deal will be done before that 10-day period is up. So we can expect to see possibly an announcement in the next couple of weeks, which sounds crazy considering we spent 5 months hoping for undisputed. And that didn't happen yet. Tyson Fury has already signed his side of the deal to fight Deontay Wilder for the third time. Tells you a lot about this deal. If they can get that done that quickly, yet Undisputed took them 5 months, of course it's a big fight, but still, 5 months and they still didn't get it announced. And in a couple of days, almost, he's fighting Wilder again, and things are moving very quickly. Does tell you a lot about how possible Undisputed ever was to happen in August. But anyway, let's move on and talk about AJ versus Usyk. A couple of days ago, Usyk put up this video of him standing on the scales and he was 231 pounds. Now, that's a bit heavier than he weighed in against Derek Chisora, which was around 215, maybe 217. So around that region. So he's clearly put on around 10 to 14 pounds in weight. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to bulk up and get bigger again. That just means that he's filling out into the heavyweight division. And of course, he no longer has to worry about making weight. The thing is with Usyk, is he didn't know who he was going to be fighting either. He thought it could be Joe Joyce or Anthony Joshua, although I do have a suspicion that he never thought the Joe Joyce fight was going to come off. He always knew he would be fighting Anthony Joshua. He just needed to wait for that confirmation to come through. Because if you look at it logically, did he ever really try and make the Joe Joyce fight? Not really. I think that he was hoping that Anthony Joshua was going to come around, and that did happen. So it was kind of a good decision from him to try and put off the Joe Joyce fight, because had they announced that, then that would make more trouble for them again. Because they were talking about having that fight in April, so that fight could have already happened. Or if not that, then it would be very close. What are they going to do then? Are they going to pull Usyk from that fight? He's done a training camp for Joe Joyce, now all of a sudden he gets his opportunity at AJ. So that would have made things very difficult, so I do think he was holding out in the hope of fighting AJ. I don't believe that they would have made any advances until Undisputed was announced. That never happened. And we have heard Usyk say on multiple occasions that he believes he will be fighting Anthony Joshua and he wants to wait and see that they can make Undisputed before making any decisions about the Joe Joyce fight. He always knew he was going to be fighting Anthony Joshua, it seems. He knew that Wilder was going to win the arbitration, or had a sneaky suspicion, even when Bob Arum and those over at Top Rank did not, or did they, because they had that date booked in July. They spoke about that before the ruling of the arbitration, so that is very interesting. But Usyk now gets his opportunity, and they were talking about still an August date for Anthony Joshua versus Usyk. I would imagine, had there not been this Tyson Fury situation, then they would have fought already. And there is talk of AJ fighting twice this year, so if he fights in August, he won't fight again until December, I would imagine. So Anthony Joshua can still have a good active year in the sport of boxing. I mean, he only usually fights twice a year anyway. He can still get those 2 fights in 2021. We don't know who it will be in December. They're going to try and make Fury again, but I mean, this time around, I'm not going to buy into it. I'm not going to buy into the fact that they are going to make this big fight, because Fury says that Usyk will beat Anthony Joshua, so if he believes that, then he'll be fighting Usyk in Undisputed, and there's no guarantee that he's going to beat Deontay Wilder. I mean, you would expect it based off of what has happened, but all it takes is one shot, and that could be it. So there are no guarantees, and as I said, Fury does seem to believe that Usyk will beat AJ. I'm not of that belief. I think that Anthony Joshua will have too much for Oleksandr Usyk, but it will be a tough fight, and it will be an entertaining one as long as it lasts. The worry for Anthony Joshua could be that he's been in this situation before, where he's been wanting to make another fight, or he has been close to fighting someone else like Jarrell Miller. I know that he'd already done a training camp, or majority of it, then Andy Ruiz came in, and he couldn't make the big fights that he wanted, and we know what happened then. This time around it's a bit different. He's more experienced, he's more mature, and it's not happening halfway through camp. He still has 12 weeks to get ready for Oleksandr Usyk, but it is a similar situation, and he is going in there against a very tough fighter. So it will be difficult for Anthony Joshua to overcome it, because we know that he was not pleased with Tyson Fury and his team in light of this situation, but the only thing he can do is get his head down and move on. He's going to be able to do that. I believe that he's more mature now, and he will understand that Usyk is not someone to underestimate, because he was undisputed cruiserweight champion. He's not shown a lot at heavyweight, but that's nothing to go on, especially when you consider how good Usyk is. He could put in an incredible performance against AJ, and AJ will have to do more in that fight. I mean, Usyk's had 2 fights at heavyweight now. Imagine if he didn't have any. Those 2 fights were integral. He didn't look the best in either of them, but still, he's had those 2 fights now. But because he didn't necessarily look good in either of them, that's why that proves to you that he needed them in order to get to an Anthony Joshua fight. Because if he just moved up and fought AJ in his first heavyweight bout, then you have to wonder about his chances. Now, his chances have only gotten better as he's grown into the heavyweight division. And we are seeing with that video he put up of him standing on the scales that he has put on some extra weight, and I know that 14 pounds or just under is not a lot. It's not a lot when you think about it, but when you think about a boxer who is a mover, who has the footwork like Usyk does, and the kind of game plan he will execute against AJ, then that is quite a bit of weight to put on, and could make it more difficult for him when it comes to maneuverability and endurance in the AJ fight. So having said that, I'm not entirely sure we can take too much from Usyk's fights at heavyweight. Obviously you have to factor that in when you think about how good he was at cruiserweight and how he has struggled so far in the heavyweight division. But let's remember, he's still won, he's still undefeated. He didn't lose either of those fights. I mean, you could give it to Chisora, you could give it a draw also, and he did definitively beat Chaz Witherspoon, although he was stopped on his feet. I mean, he didn't represent all that many challenges for Usyk in the boxing ring, but Chisora did, and Usyk did struggle also. I'm just thinking that that will put him in good stead going into the AJ fight. So guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? It seems AJ versus Usyk will happen around August time, and it seems also that a deal will be reached within the next week or maybe 2. We won't be waiting for an announcement as long as we did for AJ versus Fury, an announcement that never was going to come. This time around, at least we know that it's going to happen, because both fighters are actually on the same page this time around, and the hope is obviously that Anthony Joshua does not overlook or underestimate Usyk. I don't think that's going to happen, given he's been there before and he knows how good Usyk is. He's wanted to compete with Usyk before. He said about the Usyk fight. So I'm not expecting AJ to underestimate Usyk, and he has already said what he had to say to Tyson Fury. He will now move on because he's not fighting Fury, he's fighting Usyk. Anyway guys, drop your thoughts on this in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.